92% of households that join Peloton early in the year are still active a year later.
Yeah, if you like cycling to EDM.
Not just EDM. Try cycling to Broadway hits, take a scenic hike in Iceland on our treadmill, or roll to some 80s jams.
Because I have so much free time.
Whether you have 30 minutes or just 5, Peloton can fit any schedule. 92% stick with it. So can you. Try Peloton tread, row, or bikes risk-free with a 30-day home trial. New members only. Not available in remote locations. See additional terms at onepeloton.com/home-trial.
Welcome to the Fantasy Throwdown Podcast, bringing you the latest from the world of sports, DFS, and gambling. With over 5 years of hot takes and millions of downloads later, I guess he's been doing something right. Now, sit back and listen to one of the sharpest minds in the game. Here's your host, Dwayne Callender.
Welcome to the show, everyone. Baseball season is right around the corner, so let's talk about what I expect to happen in the upcoming year. And to do that, we got to talk about the rule changes, because for those of you who have not been following baseball, and to be perfectly honest, baseball hasn't really given you much to want to follow, if we're being at all honest with ourselves. From a marketing standpoint, baseball has tried to do a number of rule changes to get casual fans interested in the game again. And among them is the pitch clock. So for those of you who do not know, moving forward, MLB has implemented a pitch clock wherein the starting pitcher has to deliver a ball to the plate within 15 seconds. Otherwise, they are automatically charged with a ball on the mound. Now, if there's a runner on base, they have 20 seconds to deliver the ball to the plate. Obviously, this is a change for certain guys who like to get into a set routine and stare down hitters. All that's gone. So the Nolan Ryan approach, and even then, Nolan was a fast worker. Like, I know sometimes Nolan would stare dudes down and Bob Gibson would stare dudes down, but those guys actually worked fast. I'm actually in favor of this. I know people were complaining about the pitch clock, but truth be told, the pitch clock definitely needed to be implemented years ago, because we were getting way too long in terms of played out at-bats. Because truth be told, batters were abusing this too, where they were taking forever in a day to get ready in the box. They're not going to get the same privileges that they used to have in the box, and doing the whole human rain delay technique of having every pitch take about 1:30 to get done. So, all told, like, if you're someone who's been watching baseball for decades upon decades like me, you know, it's a case where baseball games in general, for guys, and I know this is a difficult thing to grasp, we used to get baseball games well under 2.5 hours. It's not that crazy for baseball games to be that length. It's only because of the 90s and bullpen changes and just all the other minutia that got thrown in there, that crap, that we started getting into these long, overblown games. And, you know, I think it's just from the standpoint of, I think, by and large, we have placed ourselves into an awkward position of having these games drag well and beyond where they needed to be. And cracking the whip, if you will, on the clock and having more constrained measures, while draconian in a sense, I think it's needed, because we were spiraling into the realm of 5-hour baseball games when there's absolutely no need. Like, realistically, if it was cricket, it would make sense, because the way cricket's structured, okay, it's a drawn out affair, but even then there's a pace to it. There was no pace happening with baseball games. It was just being dragged out for the sake of being dragged out. And it needed to change. So that's where we ended up with the pitch clock. Now, the bigger part that I don't think people are paying attention to, that people have ignored, is not only is the pitch clock in effect, you can't hold base runners the way you used to anymore. And that's going to change baseball games. Because MLB has limited the amount of throws over to a base runner to 2. And this is not getting talked about enough. You can't hold base runners the way you used to, where you just look them over. If you have to commit to throwing to the base runner, and if you threw it more than twice, it's considered a balk. So you're going to see more base runners being more adventurous on the base paths, and this should lead to more action around the game, because the game was getting way too stagnant with just hit and watch the home run ball go by. Because you've got guys that are just slugging, and yes, the elimination of the shift is going to improve some offense of teams that just want to slug. But it's the base running changes that I see being the most impactful change. Yes, the pitch clock is a change, but that's not going to be the truly impactful things, because pitchers need to be on a better... I think having pitchers on a more of a set routine would improve their pitching regardless. I think too many bullpen pitchers, especially the bullpen guys. The starters were one thing. The bullpen guys were even worse with some of the stupid routines you get going. Because I think they got in their own heads with why they were so erratic pitching-wise. But the truth of the matter is, it's the base running that's going to be the telltale sign of if we get an improved baseball product over than what we've had the last 15-plus years. Because the truth of the matter is, with the base running changes, you can only check the runner twice, otherwise it's a balk, and the bases are bigger. So, I know a lot of you don't pay attention that much to baseball, but I'm going to lay out exactly how much of a difference it is. The old base paths were 15 by 15. Now, it's 18 by 18. You got a 3-inch difference, and I know some of you are already saying that's what she said jokes. Those jokes are played out. I'm sorry. We love The Office. The joke is played out at this point. You cannot overemphasize the amount the inches make. You cannot overemphasize that. The bang bang plays that you were seeing, I mean, Ichiro is now technically considered the all-time base hits leader. If Ichiro was able to play with these base paths, Ichiro literally would have an additional 250 hits minimum, because of how many bang-bang plays he had. Because Ichiro, as fast as he was out of the box, if you gave those extra couple of inches, because those bang-bang plays where you throw to the bag and the base runner, their foot may have hit the bag, or the ball might have just gotten into the glove beforehand, the runner is going to beat that throw like pretty much 10 out of 10. Like, I'd say 9.5 out of 10. It's pretty much 1,000%. Like, I cannot stress this enough. The base path change, because of all those close plays of first base where you have the umpire going out those are gone because of the size of the bag. As long as you can actually run with any sense of purpose and aren't a slug, you're gonna beat out the throw. If it's a close infield grounder play, you're going to get more infield hits because of the base path change. And again, I said this before, because of the lack of ability to hold runners with the throws over to first, you're going to get more advantages being played out to the teams that can actually run. Teams that are not like the Yankees. I'm going to say this one, these rule changes that are being impacted, you know who's going to hurt? It's going to hurt the Yankees. I know people want to say that it's like, oh, well, without the shift, the Yankees are going to be a juggernaut. I got news for you. the fact that the base paths are bigger and you can actually use your team speed more, and you can't hold runners, and those teams that don't really have dominant catch, like the Yankees were able to take advantage of being able to hold runners and throw down the first, like all that stuff gone. I'm telling you, it is going to be the dream of the Tampa Bay Rays to just pick apart this rule and take full advantage of it. This is going to be a very unique season because the league-wide batting average was .243 last year. .243 was the league batting average. That's the lowest league batting average since '68 when they had to raise the mound to give hitters a better chance of hitting the ball. They had to raise the fucking mound. Like I can't be. That's why we had to put in the rules, because the game was getting so bad with teams not being able to get on base. The singles rate last year was less than 5% per team. It's the lowest rate of singles per game. Like 5 singles per game. Like, that was the lowest in over 70 years. And the only two years that were worse were 21 and 20 during the pandemic, coming out of it. Like, teams aren't hitting singles anymore. Everyone's trying to hit for power. There's no singles, and you're not getting any base runners. Like, they're trying to actually fix the game. It's just saying. I don't know. It's like all the left-handed hitters that are talking about how much they're going to hit better with the shift. I want to know exactly how many of them can actually run, because if they can't run, it's still going to be an issue for them on how quickly they can actually take advantage of it. Because again, you can get on base, but if you can't run the base paths, your value is going to drop moving forward in MLB. I cannot be any clearer than that. The base runners are gonna need to be more emphasized moving forward with teams. Like the way they were doing Moneyball, where you didn't really care about running, that model's changing. They are going to increase this significantly. When they implemented the base path changes in the minors, the base attempts and steals went up significantly. And by significantly, I mean over 45%. So, I'm just saying, there's still going to be an opportunity for guys to there's going to be certain areas where the game's not going to change that much, and because I know people don't like change. But if you've been following baseball closely enough, you've known the sport has been broken for quite some time. So, I, for one, am excited to actually see some of these rule changes being implemented, because we desperately needed to spice things up a bit from the tedium of some of the games. So, we're going to go into some of the divisional rounds and some of my favorite bets of the baseball season after the break. But yeah, we needed to cover the rule changes, because I don't think enough people are accentuating the fact that the teams with actual team speed are going to be at a significant advantage over everybody else in the field. It's going to be a big deal, and it's going to play out at real early in the season. And I don't think a lot of teams are ready for that just yet. But more to come after the break. Stay tuned.
Don't go anywhere. The Fantasy Throwdown Podcast will be right back after our sponsors pay the bills.
92% of households that join Peloton early in the year are still active a year later.
Yeah, if you like cycling to EDM.
Not just EDM. Try cycling to Broadway hits, take a scenic hike in Iceland on our treadmill, or row to some 80s jams.
Because I have so much free time.
Whether you have 30 minutes or just 5, Peloton can fit any schedule. 92% stick with it. So can you. Try Peloton tread, row, or bikes risk-free with a 30-day home trial. New members only. Not available in remote locations. See additional terms at onepeloton.com/home-trial.
Welcome back to the show. Hope you got your popcorn ready.
All right, so we are back talking about the MLB season as a whole. Let's just talk about the futures for the World Series because, at the end of the day, that's what everyone always cares about, who the favorites are. If you look at the live odds, you've got the Astros as the top favorite at 6-1 odds. So obviously, if you bet 100, you get 600. The Braves are 8-1. Dodgers 8.5, along with the Yankees. The Mets at 9.5. The Padres and Blue Jays. The Padres are 10-1. The Blue Jays, I was mistaken. Depending on certain markets, you see the Blue Jays at 10-1. Other markets, you see them at 13-1. Obviously, you shop odds. So whether you're looking at DraftKings or FanDuel or BetMGM or PointsBet, BetRivers, you try to shop different places to get the best odds to maximize your dollar value when you're betting these futures. But if I'm being perfectly honest, the teams that I'd be looking at the Braves. To me, I talked about this before the break. You want team speed and teams that can hit. The Braves do both. The question with the Braves last year was the fact that the Phillies just got incredibly hot with the bats at the right time. But honest to God, if you play that series 10 times, the Braves beat the Phillies 8 out of 10. And it's not to say that the Phillies were lucky to win that series. It's just that the Phillies were on such a hitting streak in that playoff period that they were smashing the ball, and it took a lot of effort for the Astros to put them down. Like, the Phillies had to go cold with the way they were slugging. They were hitting good pitches. Like, that's the thing. The Braves lost, but it was not as though the Braves pitching staff pitched poorly. The Phillies were just hitting good pitches, in my opinion. So, the Phillies were better than the Padres, and they got to the World Series. But, the Phillies at 18-1. Obviously, the Rhys Hoskins injury was huge because the Phillies, before then, were 12-1. The Hoskins goes down with the blown ACL. Doubtful he comes. Is there a chance he could come back late in the year? Possible, but highly unlikely he makes it back this year. So, no Rhys Hoskins for the Phillies. Huge deal for their hopes of making the playoffs because, again, the Phillies were a borderline playoff team. They had to make it in basically on the last week of the year. It's hard to actually say the Phillies are okay to make the playoffs. Again, as long as the Padres take care of business the way they're supposed to, and the NL Central isn't a complete dumpster fire, it's going to be tough for the Phillies. They should still make the playoffs, but it's still going to be tough. If they don't have the same hitting at the same clip that they've done in the past. But the Phillies are one of those teams where as long as they get into the show, with the lineup that they have, they're always dangerous. Because unlike, I would say, the Yankees, where it's more formulaic in terms of how they're going to approach every at-bat, the Phillies are more free swingers, and with the free swingers, you get more volatility because of their talent. Their talent can actually overcome good pitching. That's the dangerous part where you come up against the Phillies. It's just that the Padres got more of that random type hitting as long as Tatis is back to his form. If Tatis is not back to his form, I take the Phillies or the Padres in a playoff series. If you get Tatis back and he's actually back in form of where he is supposed to be, it's a different story. But if we're talking about the overall team that I would be betting from a future standpoint, it's the Braves. It's not close. I think the Braves odds and the Astros odds should be flipped. I think the Braves are the team that should be 6-1, and the Astros are the 8-1 team. But I get why it's like the Astros defending champs. You know, I get why the Astros are the pick. I'm just saying, if we're being honest with the rosters and the rule changes, it balances out more. It balances out more in favor of the way the Braves approach the game. That's the way I look at with the rule changes. Like, if we were just basing off of the last year's rules, yeah, I would make the case for the Astros being the presumptive pick. Based off of the rule changes, I think the Braves far and away should be the presumptive pick. I think these rule changes favor the Braves more than any other team in baseball because of their combination of speed and power. Acuna is going to be a monster in some of these matchups. Again, you can only throw over to first base twice. Like, you not being able to check run, like the Braves with Albies and Acuna, it's gonna be a pain in the ass playing the Braves. Like, it's the reason why I don't like the Mets as much as I would have with the old rules. I'd feel more comfortable with the Mets. With the new rules, it's gonna be a pain in the ass for the Mets to actually beat the Braves. Just being honest, and it's not that it's hating on the Mets, because the Mets. And I gotta say this because I've heard from Mets fans that I tend to be more negative with them as a Yankees fan, and I gotta be honest. The roles have flipped between the Yankees and the Mets. The Yankees are now the new Mets. The Mets are the Yankees in terms of willing to spend to try to get something done. Because the Yankees spend money to have it look as though people can't criticize them. The Mets are spending money to win. Like, the mentality of the organizations have flipped. So, for all intents and purposes, the Mets fans can at least take solace in that, is that at least they more embody what George Steinbrenner represented in New York than what the current Yankees regime does. That's what the Mets can take solace in. And as far as the on-field product, the Mets still have it, even with Edwin Diaz his injury during the World Baseball Classic celebrating. It's a fluke injury. But, again, in terms of a needle mover, I don't think it's as big of a needle mover as other people are making it out to be. The problem I see for the Mets is their division. The Braves are... I honestly believe the Braves are the best team in baseball. With these rule changes, their speed and power, I don't think anyone really matches up well against the Braves. It's a very unique situation where, outside of realistically, the Padres could actually match up speed and power, because the Padres can steal bases too if they choose to do so. It's gonna be interesting with these rule changes how some of these teams take advantage of it. But I think the Braves are going to be a problem. I think they're going to be a problem for a while because these rule changes aren't going anywhere. So, that's just initial thoughts from the opening odds of who can win the World Series. If you want dark horse candidates, I would say the Mariners and the Rays are both at 20-1. And those are the two teams where, again, with the rule changes, you want to be able to use speed and have guys that are young, that have power upside, but also speed. The Mariners and with J-Rod, and you got Franco with the they have combinations, so you get these unique teams where they have a little bit more balance than what you would see out of other squads. It's something that you have to at least be willing to take a better inventory of in the future. So just bear that in mind. Now, as we go into the individual divisions, I'm going to just be honest with some of the win totals. We're not going to get all these correct, but some of these just look outright sus. I don't know how people are still banking on the Angels winning 80 plus games. I thought people would have learned their lesson by now, but apparently not, because on the over-under for win totals, I see the Angels at 81.5. And I keep shaking my head and wondering, at a certain point, I know what statistical models represent. I know how good Ohtani is. But I know the rest of the roster. Mike Trout, again, is more interested in being a weatherman than he is being Mickey Mantle. If you start looking at the rest of the team, they had to sign Brandon Drury because of how injury prone Anthony Rendon is. Like, the Angels roster is not deep at all. It's essentially a AAA roster, and they had to bring in Gio Urshela to try to stabilize it, and I actually like Gio. Gio's going to help that team. The problem is, you start looking at the rest of that roster, you got Jake Lamb, you got Brett Phillips, you're essentially banking on Hunter Renfroe being a more consistent hitter than he typically is. You look at the Angels roster, and I look at it and say, in a division where they got to play the Astros, the Mariners, and don't forget, the Rangers upgraded their pitching staff. So not only are the Rangers going to still score a bunch of runs, they're actually going to have better pitchers. Like, the fact that people are banking on the Rangers and the Angels to both be able to finish over 80 wins is ludicrous. Either you bet one to finish over or you bet one to finish under. They both cannot be finishing with over 80 wins, and you're expecting Seattle to win 87 games and the Astros to win 96. It's not going to happen. Like, you're going to have to start taking stance. So this is where I kind of look at over-unders, because Astros should be there. The Mariners, realistically, because of, and you got to remember, the reason why, and we talked about this last year, the reason why the Mariners are good now is because the Cincinnati Reds gave up on playing baseball for the next 5 years. Straight up. The Cincinnati Reds gave up on playing professional baseball for 5 years. Because they traded all their good prospects, inexplicably traded all of them, just to collect revenue share money and rebuild their prospect pool instead of actually paying their prospects for the next couple of years. So all the good prospects the Reds had, they went to the Mariners. So that's why the Mariners are a problem, because the Mariners still have viable pieces. It's not a flash in the pan season that they had. They basically took the best players on a playoff team that just decided to give up after the lockout and moved them over to the AL West. So that's why the Mariners are a legitimate playoff team. So you have to bear that in mind. So you got two playoff teams already in the Astros and the Mariners. What you have to determine is, how much do you think Texas and LA can beat up on Oakland to get close to 80 wins? I think they both fail, truth be told. I don't think the Rangers or the Angels get to 80 wins. I think they finish probably in the mid-70s. So I would take the under on both of those squads. Oakland's going to be an absolute train wreck. The A's have no interest in winning games. The Oakland A's are trying to get out of their stadium deal with the city of Oakland and move to Vegas, and they are going to there were like crazy stories coming out of Oakland. Like, you got rats like in the stadiums. Like, you got like a infestation report. Like, it's wild. It's like a public service health announcement trying to go to Oakland A's games, and people wonder why people don't want to go to A's games. Like, why would you want to go to a place where the team is actively trying to get you not to go to games? Like, and it's a public health concern. Like, realistically, there are aspects that you should be concerned about in the AL West. Going to games in Oakland probably is like near the top. Just saying. Anywho, that was the AL West. But that's where you have the AL favorite, the Astros. It's like, it's clear it's the Astros division. When you turn your attention over to the AL Central, it's a complete hodgepodge. And why is that? Because none of these teams actually care. Like, I'm being honest here. They shuffle the deck on pieces, but realistically, the only team that tries to kind of compete is the Twins. The White Sox know they needed to add pieces. Added no one. They let Jose Abreu walk to the Astros when Abreu was essentially their best hitter and consistent hitter. Yes, Abreu is 36. He was still consistently their best hitter, without question. That White Sox offense, I think, takes a step back. Tim Anderson Jr. is already taking pot shots at the organization, saying it was great to play in the World Baseball Classic because it was finally time to be in a spot where he actually played meaningful games. So, he's already kind of he already is kind of telling you he's checking out on the season before the season even starts. It's not out of the realm of possibility that you get a scenario where this White Sox team craters. And people are asking, what happened to the White Sox this year? I would not be shocked if the White Sox finished behind the Detroit Tigers. And the Tigers are projected for 68 wins this year. I think the Tigers could surprise and win 70 games. It would not shock me if the White Sox finished under 500 this year. In terms of the Indians, caught myself, said the Indians. I meant Guardians. I know it's that name's still never going to stick with me. The Guardians and the Twins. Guardians project for 86.5 wins. In terms of like the Vegas totals, 86.5 is the over under. The Twins at 84.5. Even if when you look at the statistical models, they literally line up directly with the betting markets. And that's how the betting markets are kind of looking. Everyone's using statistical models, so that's nothing new. But the way I look at both these squads is it kind of comes down to who can beat up on Kansas City and who can beat up on Detroit. The problem is, I don't think Detroit's as bad as people think. Like, people expected Detroit to have the breakout year last year, and now this year they're down on them. I think it might be just a year too late, and the pieces kind of come together more for Detroit this year, where they finish in the 70s, and then all these other teams are low 80 totals. Now we get to the AL East and my Yankees, which I know many of you say I'm not a real Yankees fan, but being a real fan would be being honest with yourself and assessing the team where it is. Aaron Judge had a record-breaking year last year. Like, a career-defining year last year. Breaking the AL home run record. The Yankees themselves had a record-breaking year for the first 6 months of the season. Well, actually, I shouldn't say 6 months. I should say 4 months. Because everything after July was a complete and utter nightmare. the Yankees are projected for 94 wins. I think everyone's being way too optimistic with this Yankee squad. They're running it back with the same group that peaked in mid-July and never came back to anywhere close to that form. You had Anthony Rizzo with a slugging percentage that was well above his career average, that he hadn't approached in since his rookie year with the Cubs. He was slugging for a high average. The average was dipping. You had, I mean, whatever you want to call Josh Donaldson's year, dude was washed. You had Stanton putting up high slugging percentage numbers when he was healthy, and that's a big if. He had numbers. You had Glaber still not where he needed to be, but again, the first 3 months of the year with the Yankees, everyone's hitting, even Kinder Kalefa. Then reality set in, and everyone's going with the rose-tinted glasses of Stanton's going to be close to what he was last year, and that he's truly hitting his peak, and not coming into the reality that the Yankees could easily regress and be closer to the team that we saw post-July than anything we saw through April and May. Because in April and May, the Yankees came out like gangbusters, and they were just stomping teams. There's a very real chance, again, I'm going to say this again, because I said it last year, and everyone is like, oh, you see, you're going to walk back on what you said about the Yankees? No. I honestly believe this roster is poorly constructed, because, and it's even worse now with the new base running rules, because this team has no team speed. There's no speed on this roster. Look at this roster. Outside of what you might get out of Volpe, and again, that's not necessarily considered his strongest attribute, even when he does play. Like, it's not exactly... It's not exactly his, again, he might be able to steal 20 bases. That might be his peak. Like, he's the only base stealer on his squad. Because he played under those minor league rules. He could actually be the only guy who could steal bases on this squad. So, again, the Yankees, they actually need Anthony Volpe to be good. And they need to be really good early. It's actually kind of scary. Because people are projecting the Yankees as being the third favorite to win the World Series. And I'm looking at the squad saying, man, I just hope we can actually get through the AL East. Because I look at Toronto, speed and power. I look at Tampa, smarter than we are, and they have actual speed on the base pass and hitters that can actually hit for better averages now that the shift's gone. I think the shift changes, yes. Will the Yankees still put up numbers? Yeah, but that's all they can do. They can only slug. The getting rid of the shift benefits more teams that aren't true home run hitters like Tampa than it does the Yankees. I know there are going to be a couple extra base hits for the Yankees, but it's worse for when you got teams that aren't good hitters like Tampa getting on base when they're faster. They can get on the base pass and steal. Like, this is a problem for the Yankees. It's actually a problem because Tampa and Boston are going to be able to nickel and dime the Yankees for runs. I'm telling you this now. The AL East is going to be a problem for the Yankees. And so I'm under on the win total for the Yankees. Don't be shocked that this team is winning less than 90 games this year. And is struggling to make it into September. I don't want to hear the crying about why the Yankees are bad this year when, it's a dogfight in the AL East. I'm just telling you guys this now. Judge had a transformative year. The Yankees paid through the nose to keep him and did nothing else, which is exactly what I told you that they would do. They were going to use Judge as their little marketing tool. They're going to put the blame on Judge's salary as to why they couldn't have the flexibility because they talked a big game about bringing in all these dudes. Like, people were saying, oh, they're going to bring in Brian Reynolds and make a big trade. And they didn't do any of that. Just like I said they would. The Yankees have their marketing tool in Judge. If you come to the stadium, buy the beer and all the condiments, you got the LaBelle sandwich at the stadium. You're gonna like the. Actually, do they? Actually, I still think they did sell Pat LaFrida at the stadium. I gotta double check that for the burger next time I'm there. Anyway, yeah, you're gonna pay for the overpriced food. You're gonna pay for the beer, and that's all I care about. Realistically, that's all Hal Steinbrenner cares about. And the Yankees fans are gonna buy this hook, line, and sinker. I know a lot of you think you're smart baseball fans, and yes, I'm not saying that you're not. Some of you are very knowledgeable. But you let your emotions get the better of you, because if you think that the Yankees are actually making significant moves this year to upgrade the roster when Garrett Cole's in his walk year, because remember, he has the opt-out clause, he can opt out and get more money, and last time I checked, Scott Boras is still his agent. Guess what? He's going to opt out and get more money, and either the Yankees are going to pay him more, or someone else is going to pay him. They are not upgrading this roster, and I don't want to hear about people talking about Carlos Rodon. I told you this. That was going to be a mistake from the get-go. This is going to be a real tricky year for the Yankees. I just hope people are ready to accept it, because Baltimore is going to be better than people think. Boston should be better with another year. The AL East is going to have a bunch of teams in the... I would be surprised at the AL East if there weren't at least 4 teams with at least 80-plus wins. I'd be shocked. The win total for Boston's at 78.5. Baltimore's at 76.5. It wouldn't shock me if both of those teams were over 80. It wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me if the AL East had all 5 teams over 80 wins, because I think the AL East squads are significantly better than the AL Central in total. I think they're all better than all the AL Central teams. And then outside of Houston, Seattle, I think the AL East teams are better than the rest of the squads out west. I honestly think if everyone does their job the way I expect them to, the AL East is going to have 5 teams over 80 wins. And that's a problem for the Yankees, because the Yankees need to beat up on teams in order to make the playoffs. Because you know Stan's going to get hurt. You know Judge is going to get banged up. It's almost like timing for those guys to get nicked up. But the problem for the Yankees compared to other teams is, I look at the roster depth, I don't see team speed. And we just made significant rule changes that emphasize balanced rosters, team speed. That's not what the Yankees are built for. I think it's going to be a real interesting year. I think it's very interesting for the Yankees. Anywho, let's hammer out the NL, which I find significantly less interesting. I'm just gonna breeze over the NL Central. Here's what it comes down to: the Cardinals are gonna win the NL Central because everyone else basically doesn't give a damn. I know that the Brewers pretend like they care, but they really don't add anything. And you know why I know they don't care? Because they tried to nickel and dime Corbin Burnes, their best player by far, and a stud pitcher. Corbin Burnes got squeezed for literally, instead of paying him less, and the arbitration number was less than $10 million. So instead of just paying him just outright the 8.5, like I think it was like $8.7 million, they tried to squeeze him for $8.1 million, and I could have the numbers wrong yet. I don't have it like directly on hand, but it was a savings of less than $1 million. And instead of, just eating the money, in the arbitration hearings, they blamed Corbin Burnes. Mind you, their best player. They blamed him as the reason why they didn't make the playoffs, other than, I don't know, maybe bring in another free agent or a midseason transaction to help improve the roster to make the playoffs. No, they blamed him because he struggled in the last last month of the season because he was overworked by said club as the reason why they missed the playoffs. So basically, instead of like, if this was like a typical job, you have, because the overall numbers were, he was a runner-up for NL Cy Young. Like, typically this would be the exceeds expectations if you're doing a job evaluation. The way the Brewers put it, like, oh no, we only have you meeting expectations. We didn't make the playoffs. We can't pay you this much money. We didn't make the playoffs, so we can't pay you that much. It's one of the most obnoxious things I've ever seen done. And so I get why Burness is pissed, and believe me, he made it known he was pissed. I do not like the Brewers nearly as much this year anyway, and you got a ticked off starting pitcher that doesn't want to be there anymore. He already has the numbers to get himself a big free agency deal. He's just counting the days. So at this point, do I expect Burness to put in the max effort that he had been? Hell no. Because you already know how your employer is going to treat you. So he's going to count the days, put up some stats, and it's just watching the clock tick on when he can actually hit true free agency, which is in another year. I cannot wait to see the Brewers on the under. Because they're at 86.5 on the win total. And, if it wasn't for the fact that the Pirates and Reds are trying to be in a race of who can tank harder, I would be hammering this under even harder than I am. Like, I definitely expect the Brewers to be under 87 wins. I do. It's just that I can't be more aggressive about it because I know with the Reds and the Pirates tanking as hard as they are and the Cubs just being inept, there's a chance that the Brewers could backdoor their way into being at around 85 wins, and then I'm going to have to sweat it out. But realistically, this Brewers team, if this division wasn't so hot garbage, this would be an 80-win team. That's the truth of the matter. At best, they'd be 80 wins. I don't think the Brewers are any good. I think the Cardinals have free reign on this division because of how just functionally inept the rest of the division is. I hate the Cubs roster. I like it. They're trying to do a rebuild, and it's the guys that they paid. I don't even know what. Like, I don't even have nice words to say about most of the NL Central. So I'll leave it at that. It's like, I think there are a bunch of teams in the NL Central that would be dead last in most divisions in baseball, but yet they've all congregated in the NL Central, and that's how they'll just steal wins off of each other. Because I just look at, Dansby Swanson's supposed to. I'm supposed to take the Cubs seriously with Dansby Swanson, and Cody Bellinger's jacked up shoulder. I'm supposed to be taking this seriously because the reason why Cody Bellinger's on the Dodgers is not on the Dodgers anymore is because the Dodgers know Bellinger's shoulder is shot for however many reasons. The Dodgers know Bellinger's shoulder is shot, and his swing has never been the same since. But the Cubs signed him to a deal, and they gave Swanson the bag. I hate this division. The only thing of note that I could say about the NL Central, because again, I don't even like the Cardinals. Like, Arenado and Goldschmidt both look like they've plateaued in their careers. They're not necessarily excelling the way I thought. Maybe with the rule changes, you might get something out of Arenado still, but I'm not entirely sold on that front. I gotta be honest. It's hard. It's legitimately hard to take the NL Central seriously. All right, the NL West. Colorado, no thanks. Arizona, not even remotely interested. Like, the non-stores. The Giants are competing and they'll play hard, but realistically, they are an 80-win team. This just comes down to the Padres and the Dodgers. The Padres finally got the Dodgers numbers in the playoff. We will see if they can actually do it in the regular season. Because I think both of these teams are over 90 wins. I think it's pretty clear they're over 90 wins. And there's not much to it. Realistically, where the final number lands, it's not one I'd be willing to bet because they could easily win 100 games. It wouldn't shock me if Dodgers and Padres both won 100 games. Wouldn't shock me. Because I think there is potential regression to be had in the NL East. So, I think it's a two-horse race in the NL West. And the Giants are just going to be, solid, but nothing to write home about. In terms of the NL East, I said this before. I think the Braves are the best team in baseball. With these rule changes, I think the Braves, with their team speed and hitting, they're the best team. They're the team to beat. So, obviously, I have them as the favorite to win the division. The Mets, loaded up with money up the gills. Steve Cohen has brought the mentality of George Steinbrenner to the Mets. Mets fans should be excited. I still don't think you're good enough to beat the Braves. That's just the honest truth. I think the Mets are one of the 5 teams that are dangerous enough to win the World Series, and I wouldn't bat an eyelash over it. But I think the Braves are better. And I told you what I felt about the Phillies. Phillies, dangerous bats. Wouldn't shock me if they made a run. But the regression is there without Hoskins. It's very real that the Phillies regress without Hoskins in that lineup because it's a big hole in protection for Bryce Harper in general. Harper's going to have a monster year with limited protection for the Phillies to be in the mix. That's the way I look at it because I think it's a 2-team race with the Braves and the Mets. Miami, they don't care about winning. That's why Jeter left. And the Nationals are trying to tank just as hard as the A's, Reds, and Pirates. So, again, makes for a boring breakdown of divisions, but you already have over 10 teams not even trying to win. So, I'm just telling you guys outright. Like, this is part of a problem with baseball. The reason why they had to improve the product is because you got multiple owners are making so much money off of revenue sharing, they have no incentive to actually improve their teams. They got no incentive. That's just the truth of the matter. In terms of outright bets that I like to make, I still like Ronald Acuna Jr. for MVP awards. He's 10-1. I definitely think Acuna is in the mix. Mookie Betts also right there, 9.5. Now, I know Judge is going to be the presumptive favorite. I'm just going to tell you guys now, and again, the Yankees fans are going to get mad because I'm not saying Judge is a good bet, but Judge is a horrible bet. It's a horrible bet. I'm sorry. You cannot be betting on Judge to win MVP. Not when Ohtani's there. Judge literally broke the home run record, and Ohtani was winning MVP because he can pitch and hit. Judge is a horrific MVP bet. It's a horrific MVP bet. As long as Ohtani is pitching and hitting, Judge will always be a horrific MVP bet. Because you've got one guy who can play 2 positions and a guy who can only play 1. It's an open and shut case. Ohtani is going to be the MVP as long as he's healthy in the AL. That is reality. You got to accept it. Okay? Like, I think AL MVP voting and betting on that is one of the dumbest things you can do if you're not betting on Ohtani. And even if you're betting on Ohtani, he's only he's 2-1. So it's not even as though you're getting true value at it, but you have to You have to give it to Ohtani. Like, I don't understand how this is an argument. He's pitching and hitting. As long as that attraction's there, he's going to be the MVP. And, again, could you quantify by saying, well, Dwayne, you don't think the Angels are going to be a good team? It's not because of Ohtani. It's because of how incompetent the Angels are run by Artie Moreno. I can't hold that against Ohtani. He's the only reason why it makes the Angels remotely interesting to follow, because, you know, the next best player with him is the third favorite to win the MVP and Mike Trout at 8-1, but Mike Trout would rather be a weatherman than actually play baseball. Like, you can question his heart. I question it every day. It's like, I like, because the guy phones in a 30-30 season. You can hit 30 home runs and 30 steals, and Trout is still phoning it in. If Trout took it seriously, and I mean really seriously, we'd have a 50-50 season out of him. We're still waiting. Anyway, other bets I'd be interested in taking a look at. Cy Young race. Again, Ohtani is 11-1. If Ohtani is even remotely close to some of the numbers that you could see out of Jacob deGrom and Garrett Cole, Ohtani's going to win AL Cy Young. And he might win MVP because they want to give him Cy Young and MVP. There are people who are that much of Ohtani fanboys. They will do it. So, dark horse in the AL Cy Young race, I would look at Shane McClanahan at Tampa Bay. 16-1. They know how to use them. They perfect some of the matchups. That's a legitimate guy to keep an eye on. NL Cy Young, I would say Verlander. Look at Verlander. See how he's looking for the Mets. If the Mets are playing well, Verlander should be doing well with the run support that he'll be getting. 7-1 odds. He should be fine. And then I'd be looking at Spencer Strider 10-1 for the Braves. I think they're all make sense. I know people want to say, why don't you bring up Corbin Burnes? But I already told you. Like, Burnes is still pissed at the Brewers for dicking him over on the arbitration numbers. He's filling out time, in my opinion, till he gets to free agency. Like, why would you waste all your bullets having, you had over 240 strikeouts with a sub-3 ERA, and your team still try to stiff you on arbitration money? He could put up a 3.30 ERA and 200 strikeouts and still make the same money in free agency regardless. He does not need to push himself as hard and risk injury. I think he dials it back a bit. That's just my personal opinion. So, again, to summarize, I think the Braves are the best team in baseball because of the rule changes. I will need to see a lot more to say anything different otherwise when it comes to some of these teams. I just think it lines up perfectly for the Braves this year with the rule changes and their combination of speed and power. Yes, the Dodgers could always be in the mix and knock off teams. Nothing new there. But I'm just telling you guys, it's something to be acknowledging moving forward, because more often than not, you're going to start seeing disparities in the base stealing numbers, and people are going to be like, oh, wow, base stealing's up. No, really. You didn't see that coming? Well, you were told about this in advance. So, not for nothing, folks. Just be prepared when people are seeing the Yankees struggle because teams are running all over the base paths against them. You at least knew this day was coming. So, that's all I got for now. Hopefully, we have a lovely baseball season. I'm looking forward to it. You should be looking forward to it as well, because it'll be different variety coming up that you won't see in spots. And as I said, you're going to have a bunch of teams tanking. One name to keep an eye out for is Hunter Green for the Reds. I'm just saying, like, that's going to be one of the names to keep an eye out for from a pitching standpoint. Hunter Green's going to put up some numbers with the Reds this year, barring injury. He's going to put up some numbers. He's going to be the breakout guy. People are going to start talking about this upcoming year for years to come because his team sucks, but they're going to showcase him because they're going to try to flip him for more prospects because they have no intention of winning. But Hunter Green, starting pitcher for the Reds, is another guy to keep an eye out for. And we're going to see some more guys break out because of some of these rule changes. So, enjoy the baseball season. I'll be around for other stuff. But until next time, have a good one, folks. Play ball.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Throwdown podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and all major outlets.
92% of households that join Peloton early in the year are still active a year later.
Yeah, if you like cycling to EDM.
Not just EDM. Try cycling to Broadway hits, take a scenic hike in Iceland on our treadmill, or row to some 80s jams.
Because I have so much free time.
Whether you have 30 minutes or just 5, Peloton can fit any schedule. 92% stick with it. So can you. Try Peloton tread, row, or bikes risk-free with a 30-day home trial. New members only. Not available in remote locations. See additional terms at onepeloton.com/home-trial.